What are you even doing here? You were uninvited yesterday," said my daughter's husband during his wedding, which I paid for. I just smiled and said, "I'm leaving, but first meet my special guest. An old friend of yours." When he saw who it was, he fainted. Tick, tick, tick. The grandfather clock in my hallway counted the seconds as I stared at my phone, reading the text message for the 100th time. My hands trembled slightly as I set the device down on my kitchen counter. "Mom, you're not invited to the wedding anymore. Marcus says it's better this way. Sorry. Sarah." Crash. The ceramic mug I'd been holding shattered against the floor, coffee spreading across the white tiles like spilled secrets. 3 months of wedding preparations. $47,000 of my retirement savings. Years of watching my daughter Sarah fall deeper under the influence of Marcus Wellington, the man who had slowly but systematically isolated her from everyone who truly loved her. And now this. I knelt down, carefully picking up the ceramic pieces, each shard reflecting a memory. Sarah's first day of school. Her graduation from nursing school. The day she brought Marcus home, his charming smile masking something darker that only a mother's intuition could detect. Ring, ring. My phone buzzed against the granite countertop. Sarah's contact photo smiled up at me, a picture from last Christmas when she still hugged me without looking over her shoulder first, checking for Marcus's approval. "Hello, sweetheart," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom." Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry." I tried to convince him, but Marcus said. "He said you've been trying to turn me against him." I closed my eyes, feeling 24 years of single motherhood weighing on my shoulders. After Sarah's father left when she was 2, it had been just us against the world. I worked double shifts as a dental hygienist to put her through nursing school. I was there for every heartbreak, every triumph, every 2 a.m. phone call when she needed someone to talk to. Until Marcus. "Sarah, honey, you know that's not true. I've only ever wanted you to be happy." Sniffle. "I know, Mom. But the wedding is in 3 days, and Marcus's family is already here from Boston. His parents think you're difficult." Difficult. The word stung like a slap. I'd been called difficult before, by Sarah's father when I refused to let him back into our lives after his third affair, by my boss when I demanded equal pay for equal work, by Marcus when I questioned why Sarah couldn't visit me alone anymore. "I understand," I said softly. "I love you, Sarah. That will never change." After we hung up, I sat in my empty kitchen, listening to the tick, tick, tick of that old clock. The same clock that had counted down the hours until Sarah came home from dates, the minutes until her college acceptance letter arrived, the seconds until Marcus Wellington walked into our lives and changed everything. But as I sat there, surrounded by coffee-stained ceramic shards, something shifted inside me. A memory surfaced, something I'd buried deep, something I discovered about Marcus 6 months ago but had kept to myself, hoping I was wrong. Ding. My laptop chimed with a new email. Without thinking, I opened it and began typing a message to my old college roommate, Detective Linda Morrison of the Boston Police Department. "Linda, I need a favor. Remember that case you told me about last year? The insurance fraud investigation in Boston? I think I may have some information." Knock, knock, knock. 2 days later, someone was at my door. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in her 50s with graying brown hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Margaret Chen?" she asked when I opened the door. "I'm Detective Morrison." We spoke on the phone. My heart hammered against my ribs as I led her to my living room. Linda had been my roommate at State University 30 years ago, back when we were both young and idealistic, before life taught us that sometimes good people have to do difficult things to protect the ones they love. "Thank you for coming all this way," I said, pouring her a cup of tea with hands that barely shook. "Margaret, what you told me about Marcus Wellington. If it's true, it changes everything about our investigation." I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a manila folder I've been building for months. Photos. Documents. Phone records. All the pieces of a puzzle I'd been too afraid to put together until now. "It started 6 months ago," I began. I was helping Sarah with her wedding invitations when Marcus's phone rang. He stepped outside to take the call, but he left his laptop open. I wasn't trying to snoop, but I saw an email thread about insurance claims. Claims for accidents that, well, they seemed too convenient. Russell. Linda flipped through the pages, her expression growing grimmer with each document. Car accidents in 3 different states. Each time, Marcus was the sole witness to verify the claim. Each time, the payouts were substantial. "There's more," I continued. I hired a private investigator, used some of my wedding fund money. Marcus has been married before. Twice. Both wives died in tragic accidents. Both had substantial life insurance policies. Gasp. Linda's intake of breath was sharp. Margaret, why didn't you go to the police immediately? Because I love my daughter. Because I knew if I accused her fiancé of being a murderer without solid proof, I'd lose her forever. Because Marcus is smart, he's never been the direct beneficiary of the insurance money. He finds other ways to profit. I pulled out the final document, bank records showing large cash deposits into Marcus's account, always months after each accident, always from different sources. The private investigator thinks Marcus has been running an insurance fraud ring for years. He stages accidents, collects witness fees, and takes a cut of the fraudulent claims. But with his previous wives. You think he graduated to murder, Linda finished. Thud, thud, thud. My heart pounded as I nodded. Sarah just increased her life insurance policy. Marcus suggested it, said it was responsible now that they were getting married. The policy is for $2 million. Linda was quiet for a long moment, studying the documents. Finally, she looked up at me with the same serious expression she'd worn in college when we studied for final exams. Margaret, we've been investigating Marcus Wellington for 18 months. Your information. It's the missing piece we needed. But we need more time to build the case. The wedding is tomorrow. I know. That's why I brought this. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out what looked like a small recording device. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state for recording conversations. If Marcus says anything incriminating tomorrow, anything at all about insurance, about his previous wives, about his plans for Sarah, this could be the evidence we need. Click. The device was smaller than I'd expected, easily concealed in my purse. But Margaret, you need to understand the risk. If Marcus is what we think he is, getting him to reveal himself could be dangerous. I thought about Sarah, sleeping peacefully in her apartment across town, probably dreaming about her wedding day. I thought about the two women who had walked down the aisle before her, full of hope and love, not knowing they were signing their own death certificates. I'll take the risk, I said. Ding, ding, ding. The wedding bells of St. Mary's Cathedral rang out across downtown Seattle as I stood in the parking lot, watching guests stream into the church I'd helped select, for a wedding I'd helped plan, to witness a marriage I'd paid for. The recording device felt heavy in my purse as I checked my appearance in my car's side mirror. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a navy blue dress that Sarah had always said brought out my eyes, paired with a pearl necklace her grandmother had left her. If this was going to be the last time my daughter saw me, I wanted her to remember me looking my best. Whoosh. The cathedral doors opened as another wave of guests arrived. I recognized some faces, Sarah's nursing school friends, my neighbors who'd watched her grow up, Marcus's family from Boston with their expensive suits and cold smiles. Detective Morrison was supposed to be here too, posing as a guest, wearing a wire and ready to arrest Marcus the moment we had enough evidence. But as I walked toward the entrance, I felt utterly alone. Click, click, click. My heels echoed against the stone steps as I approached the cathedral. Just as I reached for the heavy wooden door, it swung open. Margaret. Marcus's voice was ice cold. He stood in the doorway wearing his black tuxedo-like armor, his perfectly styled hair and practiced smile hiding the predator underneath. What are you even doing here? You were uninvited yesterday. Behind him, I could see Sarah in her white dress, radiant and glowing, surrounded by bridesmaids. She looked so beautiful, so happy, so completely unaware that she was about to marry a monster. For a moment, my resolve wavered. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'd let my dislike of Marcus cloud my judgment. Maybe I was about to destroy my daughter's happiness based on suspicion and circumstantial evidence. Then I remember the photographs in my folder. 2 previous wives, both young, both beautiful, both dead. I smiled at Marcus, a smile that came from somewhere deep and fierce and protective. I'm leaving, I said, loudly enough that several nearby guests turned to look. But first, I'd like you to meet my special guest. An old friend of yours. Tap, tap, tap. Footsteps approached from behind me. I turned slightly and saw Detective Morrison walking up the cathedral steps, but she wasn't alone. Beside her was a tall man in a dark suit, someone I'd never seen before but who Marcus clearly recognized instantly. The color drained from Marcus's face. His perfectly composed expression cracked like a mask falling away, revealing something raw and terrified underneath. Hello, Marcus, the stranger said. Remember me? Detective James Rodriguez, Boston PD. We met 2 years ago after your second wife's accident. Gasp. Several guests had gathered behind Marcus, including Sarah, who pushed through the crowd to see what was happening. Marcus? Sarah's voice was confused, worried. Who are these people? Mom, what's going on? Marcus opened his mouth as if to speak, but only a choking sound came out. His face went from pale to gray to an alarming shade of blue. Thump. He hit the stone steps hard, his expensive tuxedo providing no cushion against the unforgiving cathedral entrance. Sarah screamed and dropped to her knees beside him, her nursing training taking over as she checked his pulse and breathing. Someone call 911, she shouted, but Detective Rodriguez was already on his radio. As paramedics arrived and Marcus was loaded onto a stretcher, Detective Morrison approached me. He'll be fine, she said quietly. Just fainted from shock. But Margaret, the recording device picked up something interesting. When he saw Detective Rodriguez, he muttered something about not again and they can't prove anything this time either. Wail. The ambulance sirens faded into the distance, taking Marcus away from my daughter forever. Sarah stood in her ruined wedding dress, mascara streaming down her cheeks, looking lost and confused. Mom? She whispered, reaching for me with shaking hands. I don't understand. What just happened? I wrapped my arms around her, holding her close for the first time in months without feeling her stiffen or pull away. I'll explain everything, sweetheart. But first, let's get you out of this dress and somewhere safe. Knock, knock. 3 weeks later, I was in my kitchen making Sarah's favorite soup when she knocked on my door. She'd been staying with me since the wedding day, slowly processing the truth about Marcus as the investigation unfolded. Mom, Detective Morrison called, Sarah said as she entered the kitchen. Marcus confessed. To everything. The insurance fraud, the murders. Both of his previous wives. I set down my ladle and turned to face my daughter. She looked older somehow, as if the trauma had aged her beyond her 24 years. But there was something else in her eyes, a clarity that had been missing for months. How do you feel about that? I asked gently. Grateful, she said without hesitation. Grateful that you saved my life. Grateful that those other families will finally have justice. Grateful that I have a mother who loved me enough to risk everything. Sniffle. We both started crying then, the kind of tears that wash away months of hurt and misunderstanding, tears that heal old wounds and forge new bonds. I'm sorry I doubted you, Sarah whispered against my shoulder. I'm sorry I let him come between us. You have nothing to apologize for, I said, stroking her hair the way I had when she was small. Love makes us vulnerable. That's not your fault. But you knew. Somehow, you knew. Tick, tick, tick. The grandfather clock marked the passing seconds as I considered her words. I knew because I love you, I said finally. Because I've known you since you were born, and I could see that you weren't yourself anymore. Because sometimes mothers have to trust their instincts, even when the whole world tells them they're wrong. Sarah pulled back to look at me, her eyes red but determined. I want to go back to work next week. Real work, not the part-time job Marcus wanted me to take. I want to be a nurse again, help people, make a difference. That sounds perfect. And Mom? I want to pay you back. For the wedding, for the private investigator, for everything. I shook my head. The money doesn't matter, Sarah. Having you back, having my daughter back, that's worth more than any amount I could have spent. Ring, ring. My phone buzzed with a text message from Detective Morrison, Marcus Wellington sentenced to life in prison without parole. Justice served. Thank you for your courage, Margaret. I showed the message to Sarah, who nodded with grim satisfaction. What do we do now? She asked. I looked around my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd raised her as a single mother, where we'd had countless conversations about boys and school and dreams for the future. The ceramic mug I'd broken that day had been replaced, but I'd kept one small shard as a reminder that sometimes things have to shatter before they can be rebuilt stronger. Now we live, I said. We remember that love isn't about control or manipulation or isolation. We remember that real love sets people free to be their best selves. And we trust that the people who truly love us will always fight for us, even when we can't fight for ourselves. Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. Welcome home. Tick, tick, tick. The grandfather clock continued its steady rhythm, marking time not as something lost, but as something precious and ongoing. Outside, Seattle's autumn sun broke through the clouds, casting warm light through my kitchen window. As I ladled soup into 2 bowls, I thought about the woman I'd been 3 weeks ago, desperate, heartbroken, watching helplessly as my daughter slipped away from me. I thought about the risk I'd taken, the faith I'd placed in my maternal instincts, the courage I'd found when everything I loved was on the line. Sometimes being a mother means making impossible choices. Sometimes it means being called difficult or controlling or interfering. Sometimes it means standing alone against the world, armed with nothing but love and the unshakable belief that your child deserves better. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, it means watching your daughter walk back into your kitchen, free from the shadows that once held her captive, ready to reclaim the bright future that was always hers to live. Clink. We touched our spoons together in a small toast before diving into our soup, the sound echoing off the kitchen walls like a promise that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, the way families are meant to do. Buzz, buzz, buzz. 6 months later, my phone vibrated insistently on my nightstand, pulling me from a deep sleep. The digital clock glowed 3:17 a.m., and for a moment, panic seized my chest. Late-night calls always brought bad news. Margaret Chen? The voice was professional but urgent. Yes, this is Margaret. This is Officer Patricia Williams with the Seattle Police Department. We need you to come to Seattle General Hospital immediately. It's about your daughter, Sarah. My blood turned to ice water. What happened? Is she hurt? Ma'am, she's physically fine, but she was involved in an incident tonight. She specifically asked for you. Screech. 20 minutes later, I was speeding through empty Seattle streets, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white. The hospital's emergency entrance glowed like a beacon in the pre-dawn darkness. Inside, I found Sarah sitting in a plastic chair in the waiting area, still wearing her green scrubs from her shift at the cardiac unit. Her face was pale but determined, and she was speaking quietly with Detective Morrison and another officer I didn't recognize. Mom. Sarah stood and rushed into my arms. I'm okay, I promise I'm okay. What happened, sweetheart? Detective Morrison approached us, looking as tired as I felt. Margaret, Sarah may have just helped us solve a case that's been cold for 3 years. Shuffle, shuffle. Sarah led me to a quieter corner of the waiting room, where we sat side by side in uncomfortable plastic chairs. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across her face. I was working the night shift when they brought in a man with chest pains, Sarah began. He was unconscious, probably a heart attack. But when I was checking his wallet for identification, I found something else. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photograph. Mom, look at this. It was a driver's license, but not just any license. The name read David Marcus Thompson, and the photograph showed a face I recognized instantly, despite a different hair color and facial hair. That's impossible, I whispered. Marcus is in prison. That's what I thought too. But when I looked closer, I realized this wasn't Marcus. This was his brother, his twin brother that he never told me about. Gasp. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Sarah, that means. It means Marcus wasn't working alone. It means there might be other victims, other women who are in danger right now. Detective Morrison rejoined our conversation, pulling up a chair across from us. Sarah's quick thinking may have just exposed an entire family operation, she said. David Marcus Thompson has been using multiple identities across the Pacific Northwest. We found 3 different driver's licenses in his wallet, all with different names. But how did you know to call the police? I asked Sarah. Because when he regained consciousness, he started talking. The medication made him confused, and he thought I was someone else. He kept apologizing to someone named Jenny about the accident, saying it wasn't supposed to happen so fast. Shiver. A chill ran down my spine. Jennifer Walsh was Marcus's first wife. She died in a car accident 5 years ago. That's right, Detective Morrison confirmed. And based on what David said tonight, that accident might not have been as accidental as we thought. Sarah leaned forward, her nursing instincts clearly engaged. Mom, there's more. While we were waiting for you to arrive, Detective Morrison showed me some files. David Thompson has been in Seattle for 8 months, ever since Marcus was arrested. And in that time, 3 women have died in suspicious accidents. Russell. Detective Morrison opened a manila folder, revealing photographs of 3 women. All young, all beautiful, all with the same trusting smile I'd seen on Sarah's face during her engagement. Rebecca Martinez, 28, car accident. Amanda Foster, 31, hiking accident. Lisa Chen, 26, drowning accident. The last name hit me like a slap. Chen? Is she? No relation to you, but the coincidence is unsettling. David seems to have a type, young professional women, usually in healthcare or education, living alone. Sarah reached over and took my hand. Mom, I think David might have been watching me. When he was delirious, he mentioned a pretty nurse with dark hair who worked nights. The cardiac unit is the only night shift ward visible from the parking garage. Thump, thump, thump. My heart pounded with a mixture of pride and terror. Pride that my daughter had been so alert and brave, terror at how close we've come to losing her all over again. What happens now? I asked. Now we build a case against David Thompson, just like we did with Marcus. But this time, we have Sarah's testimony and the evidence she preserved. The things David said while he was medicated, that's admissible in court. Ding. The elevator doors opened, and a doctor in a white coat approached our group. Detective Morrison? The patient is stable and requesting to speak with someone. He's asking for Marcus's girl. Sarah stood up immediately. That's me. He must still think I'm connected to Marcus somehow. Absolutely not, I said, grabbing her arm. Sarah, this man is dangerous. Mom, he's handcuffed to a hospital bed and under police guard. But more importantly, he might say something that could help convict him and bring justice to those other families. Detective Morrison nodded slowly. Sarah, you're not a police officer. You don't have to do this. But I want to. Those three women, Rebecca, Amanda, Lisa, they deserve justice. Their families deserve answers. And if I can help provide that by talking to David for a few minutes, then that's what I'm going to do. Click. The sound of the recording device being activated was barely audible, but it represented hope for justice that had been denied for too long. 20 minutes later, Sarah emerged from David Thompson's hospital room with tears in her eyes but triumph in her voice. He confessed, she said simply. He thought I was working with Marcus, and he wanted to impress me with stories about how clever they were. He told me about all three women, about how they researched their targets, about how they made the accidents look believable. Detective Morrison was already on her radio, calling in additional units and coordinating with prosecutors. Sarah, she said after finishing her call, what you did tonight was incredibly brave. You may have just prevented David from claiming more victims. Sniffle. As we walked back to the parking garage as the sun began to rise over Seattle, Sarah linked her arm through mine. Mom, I keep thinking about something you said that day when Marcus was arrested. About how love sets people free to be their best selves. What about it? I think that's what happened tonight. Because you loved me enough to save me from Marcus, I was free to become the kind of person who could help save others. Does that make sense? I stopped walking and turned to face my daughter. In the early morning light, she looked strong and confident and absolutely radiant with purpose. It makes perfect sense, I said. And it makes me incredibly proud. Beep, beep. My car unlocked as we approached, but neither of us was in a hurry to leave. We stood there in the parking garage, mother and daughter, watching Seattle wake up around us. Do you think it's really over now? Sarah asked. I think Marcus and David will both spend the rest of their lives in prison, if that's what you mean. But Sarah, there will always be people in this world who try to take advantage of others. The important thing is that now you know how to recognize them. And I know that even when I can't see it myself, I have a mother who will fight for me. Hug. We held each other tight in that parking garage, surrounded by the sounds of a city coming alive. Somewhere in the distance, church bells were ringing, marking the beginning of a new day. As we finally drove home together, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this moment. The fear, the doubt, the moments when I'd wondered if I was making the right choices. The sleepless nights spent researching Marcus's past, the terror of watching my daughter slip away from me, the courage required to confront a dangerous man at what should have been the happiest day of her life. Turn. The key in my front door sounded different somehow, as if we were entering not just my house, but a new chapter of our lives. Sarah followed me into the kitchen, where the grandfather clock still ticked its steady rhythm, marking time that was no longer lost but reclaimed. Mom, I have something to tell you, Sarah said as I started making coffee. What's that, sweetheart? I've been thinking about going back to school. Getting my master's degree in forensic nursing. After everything that's happened, I want to help other women who might be in dangerous situations. The pride that swelled in my chest was almost overwhelming. This was my daughter, not the scared, isolated woman Marcus had tried to create, but the strong, compassionate person I'd always known she could be. That sounds like a wonderful plan, I said. Tick, tick, tick. The grandfather clock seemed to approve as well, its ancient mechanism keeping perfect time as it had for decades, through all the changes and challenges our family had faced. Sarah was right, it really was over now. The Wellington brothers were behind bars, justice had been served for their victims, and my daughter was home where she belonged. But more than that, she was free to become whoever she wanted to be, to love whom she chose to love, to make her own mistakes and her own triumphs. And I would be here for all of it, just as I'd always been. Not because she needed me to protect her anymore, but because that's what mothers do. We stay, we support, we celebrate, and we love unconditionally. The morning sun streamed through my kitchen window, painting everything in golden light, as my daughter and I began planning her bright, unlimited future.